1. We've been renting the main floor of a house for the past 4 years. 2 years ago, a young single guy moved into the basement suite. At the time, we were both child-free and noise was never an issue. When we first moved in, he was throwing parties almost every weekend. Though occasionally annoying, we maintained a good relationship and only complained once when we were in the newborn phase and he threw a big party. The police ended up shutting down the party as other neighbors complained. Otherwise, our child got used to sleeping through the noise and were fortunate enough to have a baby that rarely cried and was a good sleeper. We did our best to accept the noise was part of shared living, and otherwise the downstairs tenant was great and almost never home during the weekdays. This year, however, things changed. The downstairs tenant unexpectedly had a baby with his girlfriend, and they moved in when the baby was about 6 months old. They now have a toddler, and while our toddler is also active, he's 2.5 years old, we also have early mornings and busy evenings due to work and daycare. Meanwhile, the girlfriend stays home with their child during the day. My main issue now is the constant noise complaints we're receiving, especially about our toddler's activities. Our living spaces are directly beneath their bedroom and vice versa, so noise travels easily. For example, they've texted us asking us to keep our toddler away from their baby's room in the mornings, and to be quiet during dinner time when they're trying to put their baby to sleep. Since then, we've been bombarded with text messages about noise, mostly about our toddler's footsteps. We don't play loud music, and we're typically in bed by 9 p.m., with our toddler asleep by 7:30. I will say over the holidays we have been home a little more, and they have now resorted to banging on their ceiling instead of texting. Meanwhile, we've had to endure their loud TV and EDM music, sometimes as late as 10 p.m., and even 8 a.m. on weekends. We've also been woken up almost every day for months by their babies crying from 2 to 5 a.m. I even purchased earplugs to put in when it gets bad. And sometime throughout the day for hours on end. But we've never complained because we understand that babies cry. We don't want to involve the landlord, do it, but we're unsure what to do. We've been respectful and accommodating, call the landlord. For example, we've tried to keep our toddler away from certain areas of the house, and we're constantly correcting him. You shouldn't be prisoners in your own home. He also regularly hears the phrase, buddy, we have to use our quiet feet in our voice, the neighbors are sleeping. But there is only so much we can control and feel their expectations are becoming unreasonable, because they are. Especially considering the amount of noise we've tolerated. Until now, we thought the noise level was part of shared living, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Any advice on how to address this situation without escalating it? We want to be good neighbors, but we also need a solution that works for us too. Okay, firstly, you block your neighbor's number from texting or calling you. I don't know why people give their numbers to the neighbors. Y'all need to stop doing that. They're your neighbors, they're not your friends, they're not your family. They have no reason to contact you. So do that first. That privilege is revoked. Secondly, while you're doing that phone in your hand, if they start banging on the ceiling, record it. And if it's happening frequently enough, you do need to call your landlord. The fact of the matter is, if they genuinely think you're noisy, they might complain to the landlord about you. Get there first. Lastly, check the noise ordinances for where you live, figure out when the latest and earliest you can make loud noises is, and if they're breaking those, report them. I know you said you don't want to escalate it, but unless moving out is an option for you guys, you kind of have to deal with it because being nice and tolerating it isn't working. And the situation's just getting worse. As you say, they've escalated to banging on the ceiling. It's only a matter of time before they start banging on your front door. Hashtag I am not a lawyer. 2. Me and my husband live in a condo. He is a very social person who makes friends everywhere. About a year ago, he met one of our neighbors in the lobby. They chatted. He invited him over for a few beers. They exchanged numbers, and since then they would call each other once in a while to come over to us and have a joint or a beer. And then one time we called him. He said sorry, but he is busy. And then suddenly, right after that, we got a bunch of text messages insulting us, saying that we are useless idiots with nothing to do while he is a busy man and we should leave him alone. We were a bit taken aback and stopped calling him. And then a few weeks later he calls and, as if nothing has happened, asks if he can come over and smoke a joint with us. We thought, Oh well, he must have just had a bad day, it happens, and let him come over. We asked what that was all about. He said he was sorry, he was stressed. Then after a while it happened again, and a few more times after that. He hangs out with us, then goes crazy and sends us like 10 messages of insults. And then, after some time, is back again. Yes, we must be too nice or too stupid for letting it happen several times. Around Halloween, he even went to our condo manager complaining we were harassing him. She gave us a call, saying she doesn't know why he came to her and what he expected her to do about us calling him, but that we should be careful because he threatened to call the police. A few weeks later, we meet in the hall and he starts chatting with me, and we are back to him coming over again. Then, of course, after one of our calls, he messages us, calling us alcoholics and drug addicts, who should stay away from him because he is too good to deal with losers like us. And we finally had enough. We answered him that he should go see a doctor because his behavior is abnormal and unacceptable, and he should leave us alone himself. A couple of days later, my husband meets him again when he is getting out of the elevator, and the guy is waiting for it. He is going for a handshake, telling my husband that there are no hard feelings. My husband tells him to stay away from us and never talk to us again. This was a week ago. Today we get messages from him calling my husband a coward for not daring to do anything to him in the elevator, and that it is no wonder because he would beat the crap out of him, saying that he will come up to us and show it to him. We didn't even respond, just laughed a bit, that it took him a week to come up with this, and that he thinks he could do anything to my husband. He's like 10 years older, and my husband works construction, and had a few fights in his life, so he could get the guy down with one punch if he would try anything. Now we're saving those texts in case he decides to call the police on us for whatever reason. Seriously, the guy is a psycho. We should sure be careful around him, and really hope we will never give up and be friendly with him again. Who knows what he will do next time. 3. Our neighbors are wastes of spaces. No livelihoods, no redeemable qualities. Just straight-up drug addicts and trouble causers. Me and my girlfriend went through hell to get this house, and we've put so much money into it, making sure it feels like a home. We were sofa surfing with a newborn baby while we were hit with delay after delay, but we finally moved in. We thought all our stresses would be behind us, but no. Kids let themselves into our garden, destroying trees and throwing things out of our bins at each other. We've had kids knocking on the living room window whilst our baby was sleeping. We hear them partying until early morning, encouraging one another to take drugs. We hear very physical arguments through the walls, and we've heard threats yelled out on the streets towards other people living in proximity. All from this one house unfortunately attached to ours. We receive no end of rubbish and food thrown over the fence and into our back garden. Bear in mind, we have kids and a dog. I've lost count of the times my dog has eaten something that's been thrown over, or when I've had to chase him around to get it out of his mouth. We're talking general food wrappers, to the food itself, including chocolate, which is toxic to dogs. Have drunken cans of alcohol too, leaving puddles for me to clear in the morning. Regardless of whether the food or rubbish is harmful, it's something we shouldn't have to worry about or deal with. We simply wish to live in peace and raise our children in a safe environment. I don't care what people get up to in their own homes, but when they go to such careless and stupid lengths to make things my problem, it makes me annoyed. The only issues I have are the ones they cause. I eventually went round to their house, asking why we keep getting rubbish thrown over. As I entered their front garden, all I could see was rubbish and dangerous scrap thrown about. Clearly they do not care. Anyways, when I confronted them about it, all they said was, "Just throw it back over then, it's not hard, is it?" These are the sort of people we're dealing with here. I responded by saying that it wasn't a solution, to which they just started swearing. You can't discuss with people like those, they thrive off of confrontation. I gave up and walked back to my house. From then on out, I made sure to throw things back over. Until tonight I could not believe my eyes. They had thrown a flammable canister of nitrous oxide over the fence. Obviously they were huffing it and decided to just get rid of it. I thought of throwing it back over, but with the item being flammable and sporting a dent from being tossed over already, I've disposed of it myself. The last thing I'd want for it to be thrown back over and for us to have an explosive tennis rally. Throwing anything into someone else's garden is inexcusable, but something as ridiculous as that? Seriously? It would take a second to consider the fact we have kids and a dog. We feel trapped, and are dying for our 12-month tenancy to be over so we can just leave. Not that we should have to, but that's how we have been left to feel. The entire town is a rough crap tip full of brain-dead idiots anyways. It's not where I want to raise my kids. We have thought about complaining to the council, however, my neighbours have thrown bricks through another person's windows once because of a little debate on the street. So if I were to put their tenancy in jeopardy, there is no telling what these reckless idiots would do to our house. If I lived alone, I'd be willing to take my chances, but because I have kids in the house, I wouldn't want any harm to come to them, because let's face it, our neighbours clearly don't care. I'd love to get them evicted in some way that would be impossible for them to figure out where the complaint came from. I can't raise a complaint with specifics such as rubbish being thrown into my garden, because they'd be able to deduce that it's us. I've kept a pile of some of the junk they've thrown over these past few months, so I'm tempted just to throw it all back over when we leave. Any other revenge suggestions, I'm all ears. Hellfreezer's note, here's what you need to do. You need to photograph, record, document everything you can, then don't do anything about it. Wait until your tenancy's up and you're leaving, then report that crap. 4. I have lived in this community for going on 4 years. We've had some small issues with neighbours here and there, dogs barking, loud music, leaving their trash near my door for hours until taking it out. Lately things have been chill. A few people around me have moved out, so it's been quiet, and I've started to enjoy making my home comfier and cozier for me and my child. Well, yesterday, I believe, someone moved in next door. I heard commotion, and saw a few men going in and out of the empty unit next door through my peephole. Cool. New neighbours after that apartment being empty for a while. I thought nothing of it. I haven't heard them since. Thought maybe they're going to finish moving in later on. I was wrong. I was getting ready to go to sleep around 1 a.m. when I heard commotion, yelling from outside, the door opening and slamming repeatedly, a woman and multiple men. I heard what sounded like someone being pushed down the stairs and a loud slap. It spilled out into the parking lot, but they must have gone back inside at some point, but I still heard them. Lots of hostile obscenities being thrown at each other. It kept escalating, louder and louder, right outside my door and right behind the shared wall. This neighborhood has never had anything like that go down. My lights were all off, and I was silent. I didn't draw any attention to myself. I was getting a bit frightened when I heard a knock at my door throughout the altercation. I went back to my room and called the police because it sounded like someone was going to get hurt or worse. I have a child. This type of stuff scares the hell out of me. The dispatcher heard the yelling. This all continued until police officers showed up and knocked on the door. Complete silence. They didn't answer. The police knocked a few more times, no answer. The police left eventually. There was nothing they could do. I was given the incident number by the dispatcher. My question is, do I call the property manager about this when the office is open again? What can they possibly do with only an incident report number? There's proof they were a nuisance at the very least. The dispatcher heard it, but there's no proof that it got physical. I'm also embarrassed because I've called complaining about a barking dog before. That feels so mundane now. I don't want to be seen as the complaining tenant, but now I fear leaving my apartment, much less leaving with my kids. I don't know these people and what they're capable of. I don't know if we can end up in the crossfire of their altercations. Who knows if they'll confront me just from their own suspicions? I'm just scared. I'm a single woman and I'm unarmed. Is saying that I already want them gone crappy of me? Sorry this is so long-winded, and sorry if this sounds dumb. I looked on Google for answers, but I can't exactly find what I'm looking for. I guess besides wanting information, I also wanted to vent and have someone listen to me since it's so late. Hellfreezer's note. Maybe going with just the dispatch information wouldn't be enough, but I do recommend just record any noises and anything you see. Don't go out of your way in a way that will get you caught, but maybe just standing at the door with your phone up against it, recording the sounds that the door amplify. That might be a good way to document anything that's happening. The only thing I can say is they don't sound like the kind of people who are going to be there long if this is how they're acting, because you can't be the only one they're annoying with all the noise. I hope it doesn't last for long and that you're free of it soon. 5. I would like to start off by emphasizing this event was 5 years ago, but I regularly think about it. My family, which is me, husband, and 2 kids, lived in a very new suburb in a private sort of neighborhood. It was a close, so it was one way in and the same way out. Behind us was a street of houses, and across the road from those houses was this very large and new park. It had all the play and sport equipment possible, including skate ramps and basketball court. For the first year and a half we were living there, it was so nice and peaceful, as the houses behind us were still under construction and no one was living there. Then one day the neighbors moved in, and all hell broke loose. I would describe these neighbors as a couple, husband and wife, newly retired, and I believe boomer, as they were around my parents' age. Just some things they did. They put in formal complaints with our town council because our dogs barked. They went to the trouble of recording these things rather than come around and chat to us about it bothering them. Both my neighbor and I were probably the only ones with large breed dogs, with the purpose of being guard dogs because our husbands traveled a lot for work, and the dogs made us feel safe. And I was pregnant and a new mum at the time. I wasn't working and could vouch these dogs only barked when there were people at the fence, delivery people approaching the house. So very standard dog stuff, not just yapping for noise. When I received my complaint, I actually knocked on their door to chat about it and found they had a very thick accent that was not native to our country. So I put on my award-winning retail smile and gave them the rundown on social etiquette in this country. They absolutely hounded and bullied my neighbor religiously. One time when we went away, we organized for a friend to stay with our pets to keep the barking to a minimum. And during this time away, we learned that the neighbors demanded to inspect our dogs. My neighbor brought her dog out on a lead, and my friend said, "You're not meeting the dogs or stepping foot on the property. There is a border collie and a bulldog, both registered and compliant with the law and council." The response of the couple was demanding to know why we needed such large dogs, and she would be getting rid of them. They were told they were delusional and to leave before the cops were notified. The couple tried to send out a petition to have our dogs removed. Everyone refused to sign it, explaining they don't have issues and stop causing problems. I think one neighbor reported their attempt at a petition. I have no idea who they reported it to, though. They bullied my neighbor so bad that she rehomed her dog. She wasn't doing well emotionally for quite some time. This neighbor and her husband even found a device in their garden, in the back corner of their yard. They never put the device there. I don't know exactly what it was, but apparently it's a device that can either stop a dog from barking or annoy them to bark more. Because they put a shock collar on their dog, they believed the devices cancelled one another out. They felt like their attempts with the dog was sabotaged. Because of the large park across the road from their house, they tried getting a petition signed to have a curfew enforced on the park and a very large fence built around it. I think quite a lot of people laughed at the ludicrousy. After my neighbor's dog was gone, they tried coming for me, but I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, but I'm much tougher and don't tolerate nonsense from others, and by this time, I absolutely hated these people with a passion. So one morning, my husband had an early day at work. He left at 4 a.m. and left our dogs in the backyard. Because others were leaving for work, it triggered our dogs to bark, and they woke me and our 3-month-old baby. Luckily, the toddler didn't wake. I messaged my husband straight away as I was angry, and he thankfully hasn't done it since. About 7:30 a.m., I am mid-breakfast routine with the 3-year-old, and also giving the baby another feed when there is a knock at the door. I'm still in my pajamas and a bit disheveled and tried to be friendly when opening the door, and the husband was there clearly annoyed. When he explains why he is here, that he was woken up at 4 a.m., I profusely apologize. I explained my husband did that and the barking woke me and the baby up. I got up my husband for it and assure him it won't happen again. He was very agitated and said, "It's time for your dogs to go. They are mongrels, nuisances, and should be destroyed." All the built-up frustration towards them finally exploded, and I ripped him a new one. I said, "Who the hell do you think you are to tell me how me, my family, and my pets are to live on this property, or dictate my pet situation? You've been here for 5 minutes, and you have a lot of nerve. Clearly, suburban life is not working out for you and your wife, so kindly do us all a solid and F off to a retirement village." The whole time my dogs were barking at him, and he was trying to shush them, so I said, "Mate, they will stop barking once you leave. You're on their turf and they deem you a threat to their human." He tried to conclude with the, "The council will hear about this." My baby was crying by that time, so I concluded with, "And if you'll excuse, I'm clearly busy. You're ugly. Have the day you deserve. And if you're so adamant on going to the council, then I will complain to the police for intimidation and harassment. They take complaints against foreigners very seriously." I was BSing on that part. I was trying to call his bluff. Smile for the property camera. Slammed the door in, never had any issues again. We moved 3 months later as my husband's work was relocating him. When I tell people about this, they think I'm making it up, but I'm not, and I am always curious to know if this behavior from them was an entitled thing, a boomer thing, or a cultural thing. Would also like to strongly emphasize that I am very inclusive and respectful of other cultures and nationalities. I work in a field where I'm around lots of culturally diverse people, and I have many friends and relatives of other cultures and backgrounds too. I am very much a "if you are kind to me, I will be kind to you" sort of person. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Naughty Neighbours, episode 27. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please do subscribe, the hit button, and like the moon, and other things also. And do support me on my Patreon if you'd be so good. $1 a month goes a long way, and is very, very much appreciated. Okay, and with no more business today, I don't believe. No, I think I have a shout out in February. I don't think there's any right now. So let's move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, have you fallen because of the weather this year or not? I ask this because I took a tumble a few weeks back in a grocery store. I think I mentioned that, but thankfully no one was around to see it. My knee's still sore because of it. It's healing, and it's not affecting my ability to walk. It's just a bit ouchy, which is annoying. It's like walking along, everything's fine, then it's like, psst, psst, psst. Remember that? You remember when you fell and you felt really embarrassed? Like, yeah? Well, this is just to remind you of that. Let me know what you think, and if you have my sympathies in a comment below. And before we go, let's take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 230, because the last Naughty Neighbours hadn't been published when I recorded this. And this was about things you promised yourself when you were younger you were totally going to buy when you were an adult and you had your own money. Then you became adult and you thought, why bother? Today's answer comes from... Three Horse Running. I always wanted a horse ever since I was a kid. Now as an adult and being around them, I realize they are quite expensive and lots of upkeep. Not to mention the price of good tack, places to ride, having a truck and trailer to haul said horse. That is very, very true. 3 Horses Running. I mean, even if you're paying for a stable to do the upkeep for you, it's still going to be very, very expensive. Still, I hope one day you do get to achieve your dream. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.